Rachel Godfrey, do you want me to be kind or nice? This week, I had the incredible opportunity to sit down with Rachel Godfrey, blonde, wild, spiritual, disruptive, delusionally optimistic. What an intro. Rachel is a former physiotherapist, a professional trainer, and high performance mentor with over 19 years of experience operating at the intersection of health, strength, and leadership. She has built multiple performance consulting and digital businesses, advised senior executives and entrepreneurs, and had her work published globally in outlets including Oxygen Magazine, Shape, Cosmopolitan, Men's Fitness, Entrepreneur.com, the Sydney Morning Herald, and the National UAE. Known as the A Players Mentor and co-director of Chase Life Consulting, Rachel has earned a reputation for working with people who operate at the top and who refuse to be managed with soft answers. At the core of Rachel's work, please listen to this one. At the core of her work is a simple but confronting question. Do you want kindness or do you want nice? There's a big difference. Raised as a tomboy in Wales, forged through rugby, and shaped early in her career by treating severely injured soldiers in a military ICU, Rachel learned that real performance is built through emotional resilience, personal responsibility, and doing the minimum effective work required, not endless grind. Her coaching blends scientific precision with deep identity and mindset work, challenging high achieving women, especially those over 35, to rebalance their strength, femininity, and self worth without abandoning ambition. Today, Rachel mentors executive and entrepreneurs to align body, business, and identity through strength training, intelligent supplementation, and direct no nonsense coaching. Her work focuses on sustainable performance, fast belief building wins, and teaching clients how to lead with both power and awareness. This episode literally is an unfiltered conversation about trauma, discipline, mindset, and what it actually takes to perform at a high level without losing yourself in the process. Now, P.S., don't forget to follow Rachel on Instagram. She's at Rachel Godfrey, and check out Chase Life Consulting and the House of Onyx for more resources and coaching. Links are in the show notes below. So click on those. Rachel's on Instagram, the Rachel Godfrey. Her websites are thehouseofonyx.com and chaselifeconsulting.com. Get excited. This one is an amazing conversation. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert, and the How Not to Die guy. And you're listening to my podcast, Straight Talk Mind and Muscle. This episode is proudly sponsored by these guys, State and State for Women, because aging is inevitable, but how we age is a choice. State is the ultimate daily formula for optimal health and longevity, backed by clinically proven 100% natural ingredients that's designed to support hormone health, stress resilience, energy, and performance. And I use it every single day. And a special thanks also to my new sponsor, Michael Mason and the Mason Survival Protocol. Links to both of these are in the show notes below. Catch all my past episodes and resources in the notes as well. Thanks for watching. Now let's get into it. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest this afternoon, gentleman's time and gentlewoman's time, Rachel Godfrey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this conversation.
I love talking off air, as it were, and turns out we have a lot in common, mutual friends, mutual places. New Zealand is a love of mine. For the listeners and the viewers, you're a high performance mentor, you're an ex-physio strength coach, and I know who you've been coached by there, but you're a very forthright woman in the, I would suggest, in the male space of gyms, nutrition, fitness, all these things. How have you got such success as a female in this originally male-dominated space?
I think I was gifted with the tomboy gene. Growing up in Wales, I grew up with two younger brothers, and it was like fight or die, right?
Yeah.
So you start growing up, and like playing sport through school was a big thing for me. Obviously, I had like the tomboy genes. I was never really into Barbie dolls. I much preferred like being outdoors, doing sport, climbing trees. I say playing with my brothers, but it was more like fighting, physically fighting. I think I used to drive my parents, particularly my mum, absolutely insane. And then, I stopped playing rugby at university. Again, like
Oh,
it was one
wow.
of those things I just fell into. It was not something that I had ever planned to do, but I think,
Mhm.
being Welsh and a national sport, being rugby, it's one of those things you become very familiar with. And
What
I had
position did
done
you
a lot
play,
of
Rach?
on the wing or fullback. So I
Oh,
was skinny and fast.
awesome.
I just fell into it because, the first year of when I was a physio, you attend like the medics, training or whatever. And I think it was touch rugby for the first year.
Yep.
And you get quite good, right? And when you're fast and you pick up skills, I was very athletic. And you kind of pick up the skills, you learn how to throw a rugby ball. Obviously, I kind of understood the basics of the game. And in the second year, we became a contact team, and honestly, I was terrified. Um, Listen, my rugby career didn't last very long. I think I did one season, and I was like, this is like, there were women the size of my husband running at me, and
Yep.
yeah, it's so I decided to stick to physio and strength conditioning, which I did through university. And so I think having the tomboy gene and being always surrounded by men and male sports, contact sports, mixed martial arts. It was one of those things that it just kind of became very natural to sort of be in that environment. And I just had a love for it. And I think, uh, watching men train, and it's not that it isn't the same for women, but honestly, I really felt women were quite complicated, very emotional. And I wasn't emotionally, back in my early 20s, I wasn't emotionally equipped like I am now to honestly to deal with women's problems. That's all I'm going to say. And so, in terms of training and like athletic development, men were so much easier to train. Honestly, you tell them what to do and they go ahead and do it. It's much easier to put like a leash on somebody than it is to try and like light the fire up in somebody.
Yeah.
So that's basically how I ended up in a male dominated career. Moving from physio into strength conditioning, I had some amazing mentors that I've met through rugby, particularly some amazing strength conditioning coaches who really showed me, bridging the gap between end stage physio and what the guys were doing in the strength room. And obviously, I've been lifting weights myself since I was 13, and so bridging that gap between the two. I'm so grateful for that because then I could take my skills in physio and biomechanics into the strength room, and I could like sort of identify, who was going downhill before they actually even ended up in the physio room. So
Yep.
yeah, that's how I ended up there.
It's interesting you say that. Interviewing Nick Gill, who's now a friend, he's the All Black strength and conditioning coach. I think for the last 13 years, literally one of the best in the world at what he does. He stated in one of the shows that 95% of the physiotherapy is done in the gym, which is
Yes.
is so telling. I've I'm 52 years old now, and I've just come to the realization, just make things stronger fixes just about everything.
Right. Exactly that. And one of my mentors, Chris Toombs, he's been in the high performance, in rugby for God, probably the past 30 years. And one of the things that he always taught me that I'd implemented throughout my entire career was minimal effective dose.
Yes.
And especially now, and I think, when you're training, you were looking at athletic development and we're looking at, men in their 20s to 30s, they're very robust until they're not. And so I think if you want to have a lifting career into your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and my dad now into his 70s and he's still a solid lifter, we got to have that minimal effective dose. And the problem is that when we look at professional sport in particular, you can't go too hard in the weight room because then that's going to affect your performance on a field. And the issue is that, we can't then expect a player to come back on Monday and Tuesday having played, a game on Saturday or Sunday where essentially you're being hit by a car several times over
Yeah.
and expect good performance on Monday and Tuesday. You may get so it's minimal effective dose on that Monday and Tuesday. Just get things moving again, assess where your body's at, where your nervous system is at, because these things are just so underrated. And I think obviously today in strength conditioning, I mean, all of these things are measured. but they certainly weren't 15 years ago, or they were just maybe starting to come in
No,
15 years
no,
ago.
exactly that. It was just you rely on the coach's skill to be able to read each
Yes.
player, each athlete, and so on. That's you're talking about the elite in there, but what are you doing now? I mean, you're over there in UAE, I think it is, and what
Yes.
are you doing now with your clients?
The polar opposite. Actually, that's not true. So what I've done is, and I mean, I guess the story of how did I come into then coaching women and having, predominantly women and specializing in women's health. In 2008, 2009, I think it was 2009, I started posting videos on YouTube of me lifting. And,
Yeah,
it wasn't like trendy to be a fitness girl back then, right?
right.
And so I was a strength conditioning coach and I was just showing my lifts. And I had quite a few ladies, on YouTube commenting, well, how do you lift like that and not like look big and bulky, so to speak. And I was minorly offended because I'm like, I spend the majority of my time trying to get as jacked and shreddy as I can. But I'm like 54 kilos soaking wet. So, it's one of those things that I think this is, unless you have certain, additional assistance, there is a limit to how much you can grow. And so this is how I started my first business back in Australia, Athletic Fox. And this was my first foray online was in 2012, where I launched the Athletic Fox Blueprint, which was essentially taking principles of athletic strength and conditioning and athletic development into training women. And so all of my programs still to this day are all like, fully periodized, and progressive. And I think that that's something that's very much missing in today's industry where, look at the fitness industry, there's no qualifications needed. And you can just seem to just pick this exercise and that exercise and basically throw shit at a wall and see what sticks. Well, proper strength conditioning doesn't work like that. Building a physique doesn't work like that. There is a set system into building a physique. And so I moved to the UAE in 2017
Mhm.
with my husband David, and we have set up Chase Life Consulting. So with what we do now, we work more on the emotional side of things. So obviously, like I alluded to before, women have a lot of emotional problems. So we build emotionally resilient women to deal with life. And especially now, women over 35, they're all high performers, high achievers. And I just saw that there's this massive gap in the market. And throughout my career, I got very frustrated when people used to say things to me like, oh, well, you need to just slow down. I'm like, you don't
Oh,
understand the DNA of somebody who is a high achiever. Like, I felt like people had a noose around my neck. They didn't understand me. And I wanted to be able to play at a higher level. And I needed mentors to support me in that, not to
mm,
tell me to slow down. And so this is a very personal thing for me. So that's what we do now is we basically help high achieving women and men, but predominantly high achieving women achieve the body and the business, because you've got to understand business in order to be able to get the body, and you've got to understand the body in order to be able to get the business. Because the traits that make somebody successful professionally, workaholic, stress addict, perfectionist, these may accelerate your career in the early days, but they eventually become the roadblock to your wealth. And they are certainly the absolute roadblock when it comes to your health. So,
yes.
how do we manage that? And that's where we come back to minimal effective dose of, okay, so what actually needs to be hit? What are the non negotiables that we can implement into somebody's life whilst we then rewire their identity and rewire their emotional mindset so that they can implement boundaries, they can ask for help, they can build support systems and structures, because the truth is that you can't be a high performer if you don't have a high performer brain and a high performer body.
There you go.
So they do
That's
go
the
hand in
that's the
hand.
sound that's the sound bite. That one right there. I can speak to that exactly. I worked with Jamie Pinnell. He's a former New Zealand SAS operator involved in a high end siege in Kabul and put a good book out. And his wife Alia Bojolova, high end psychologist for New Zealand SAS,
Mm.
they would do exactly what you're doing, the mental side. But of course, they couldn't do the physical side. They sent it to me, and I'll never forget a CEO partners, wife and husband, and they said after they got their nutrition and their sleep and their stress management right, how much more better they literally rated it as 35% more effective at their work. And they were doing
Yeah.
a little bit less work hours. So you're so right
Yeah.
about I mean, isn't it a throwaway term, mind and body, but they had their physical and psychological side sorted so that they could actually manage their high performance and do it even better. Ah, you're back.
Sorry.
That's okay. A bit of a glitch.
Yeah, my internet. Yes.
So these guys managed to get their mind and body right, and their performance in their CEO roles was so much better and less stressful, but with more performance. So it's pretty amazing that you've
Yes.
identified that as well.
Oh, I think it's a no, and I think, when you've spent long enough in your career, I mean, I wouldn't honestly, and I'll be honest with you, and I sit here now, I'm 42, and I think would I have even identified like these kind of things when I was in my like early 30s? And I think the answer is no, because when you're in your 20s, it's all about like how you look and stuff. By the time you hit 30s, I had two, I had babies in my early 30s, and then you're stuck in that bubble of raising children. My
Yeah,
children are now 7 and 5, and then you kind of come out of that and you realize what real fucking life is when you've got businesses to run, you've got kids, and you're because I think your mindset shifts, your body shifts. And I'll be honest now, like I'm the fittest, strongest, leanest like I've ever been, but I now prioritize it and I feel really good. And I think when you come through those 30s and you start to feel less good, some people feel really shit, but when you feel less good, where kids like lacking sleep, you've got two little mini beasts who are challenging you and challenging your ego at every turn, you then come out the other side and you go, okay, well, this is really what life is. And you really start to think then about longevity. And yes, you can still look good, of course. Like everyone wants to look hot. Everyone wants to be like, lean and, muscular and like look fit and look athletic. That's great. We can do that, but it cannot be at the expense of your health, because otherwise it's like, paying for stuff on a credit card. Eventually, you're going to be paying a debt with interest.
absolutely. Let's be specific though. Rach, you said the identify. We painted the picture of how good it can be, but
Mm.
you said you wouldn't be able to identify that yourself. So what do you see people? How do you see people, in my terms, falling over, as it were, at 30, where you see them at 28, and then you know that
Mm.
at 35 they're going to. What are they going to? What are these people that are listening going? Yep, that's me. I need to go see Rachel. I need to fix it. I need to do some action. Can you just list off a bunch of things that are common things that you see?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like life is just not working for you anymore.
Right.
And you get to, you go through your 20s and you can go out for your beers and you can, have your several nights on the lash and you have your weekends, etc., etc. And then you get to your 30s and, the hangovers obviously start getting like pretty bad. You throw children in the mix and then the hangovers become like, honestly, I used to have anxiety about getting hangovers with young children. So my drinking, I'm Welsh, right? So I used to love like going out on a lash. I think after having the kids, like that just became less and less. And also I think your identity shifted. So for me, I had gotten to the stage where I was like, I do not want to continue down this path of, going out on a Saturday night, getting absolutely hammered. And it was so fun. I've like many wild stories, but what used to be fun is no longer really aligned. And I was like, I started feeling like I was a little bit behind in life.
Yeah.
And I think that was the shift for me of, okay, so alcohol's not serving me anymore. It served me and it was very fun once upon a time. And I think that's one of the things. And I talk about alcohol because food was never a thing for me, but I used to like to party, so I do think there was that very much the shift where after the kids were born and not drinking. And then you realize actually how good you can feel.
Yeah.
And so that was a big hook for me of show me how good it can get. Like this is like the feeling of actually being bright eyed and bushy tailed. The two didn't match anymore. So I think for a lot of people, they get to the stage where it's such a slow decline, and a lot of people really blame things a lot on age.
Yep.
and their hormones and genetics. It's not that. It's a bunch of shit habits that they've stacked. And it's like, I call it this 1%, where you can have this goal of, going to your nearest village. And if your GPS is 1% off, like you're still going to end up somewhere in the vicinity. But the problem is with these habits, you have 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%, and people, they don't subconsciously realize that they're just this 1% off. And so instead of ending up at that village, you end up in a major city.
Yeah.
And that's when they say things like, well, this program isn't working for me. This nutrition plan isn't working for me. I'm like, honey, you never followed it in the first place. So we really have to be mindful. And this is the complete opposite, by the way, to perfectionism, because a lot of people will say, well, I can't get it perfect. No, don't get it perfect, get it done. And so we really have to remove all of the bullshit, all of the excuses in why something cannot be done. But in order to be able to do that, you see, fat loss is an emotional problem and it's an identity problem. It is not a calories and macros problem. Listen, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can tell you, just eat this, eat less, exercise more, as they say. Well, that's all well and good. It's what 99% of the fitness industry is teaching. Like a 12-year-old monkey can teach you how to do that. It's the psychology behind it and why can't people do it? So that's why we have to have the identity first. Who is she? How does she think? How does she act? How does she behave? Who does she need to become? You act from that person whilst we rewire the brain and rewire the habits, thoughts, and behaviors, and we get you to focus on what you want in life, not on what you don't want. That will drive those habits and drive those behaviors. Because what we don't want to do is fall into that dieting trap of, I have to do this, I have to do that. None of my clients, my high performing female clients, the CEOs, execs, business owners, none of them got time to count their little macros into an app or count grains of rice into plastic pots and weigh their blueberries. I mean, this is ridiculous. There are systems and structures that we can put in place to make things easy for them. And now listen, people should know what's in their food. Calories and macros, fine. Do it for a short period of time, 2 or 3 days, find out what's in your food. But longer term, we have to have systems and structures and organizations whilst we create the identity of somebody who naturally chooses those things.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Gosh, it was interesting you saying that emotional and psychological. My brain went to a completely different place with the how not to die stuff of females that have been through some really, I don't want to say it, but some really bad situations with males.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time they actually gain all that weight as armor to not be attractive as a target. Yes. And that is so saddening to me, but it just made me think back to that person may want to look good like you in the videos they see, but psychologically that shield, that defense mechanism is there as an example. So just another way of saying, agreeing with what you're saying as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, the number of trauma cases that we deal with are off the chart. And the thing is, you've got if we look at Gabor Mate's work, we've got big T and little t. So the big traumas, the obvious ones, physical, sexual, emotional abuse. And then we've got like the smaller T traumas, which may be insignificant to one person, but completely significant to somebody else. Yeah. And so, it's one of those things that, I mean, it's not my domain. It's my husband, David. He's an emotional and behavioral change specialist. So that's his area. Yep. So he works a lot more with anxiety, depression, previous traumas, abuse situations. That's beyond my pay grade. But then this is why we have to work as a tag team, because I can't create somebody's new identity if they're holding on to the past. And so we've really got to cut those cords and rewire those patterns. And I think if somebody's listening and they have been through whatever they've been through, and, you've obviously dealt with, I remember working as a physio. This actually kind of brings me back. I remember working as a physio and I was working in an ICU. And this would have been back in 2000. I was a student physio, actually. So it would have been pre-2005. And we were the main military hospital in the UK.
Yeah.
I was in Birmingham, and we had a guy admitted, and he had his left arm and his right leg blown off in one of these like IED things. Yeah. And I remember getting a handover in the morning for this guy that had come in, and I looked at his date of birth and it was the same as mine. No. And like, even now to this day, like oh my God, like that was fucking trauma for me.
Yeah, I can see.
like big fucking trauma for me to have to deal with that. It's like a 20-year-old.
Exactly, because you're essentially a girl, not even an adult
Yeah,
that can advise through experience, let alone wisdom.
exactly. Exactly. So, as a 20-year-old going through that, I was like, holy shit. And this guy, like, he actually made a full recovery and, he came back in his wheelchair and, a couple of months later and saw us all. But, I don't think you ever forget, you never forget cases like that.
Isn't that first off, thank you, and I hope that you're okay. Thank you for
Yeah.
opening up about that, and I mean that because you come across on socials as this incredibly strong and
The hard
forthright
ass,
woman,
I know.
and you are, but people don't
Mm.
realize, and all the listeners and viewers, you are there to help people. I have all sorts of people on this show. I've got tier one operators. I got people
Yeah.
from fucking Black Hawk down, the real Black Hawk
Yeah.
down, and they've been through the worst, and all of us, not one person, not one guest, and I choose the guests wisely. We're there to help others. And even though you're a tough love woman,
I am.
that's coming from a place of real empathy that you just showed there.
Yes.
We're there to help others. And that can segue into how are you doing this now? Your socials
Mm.
are a great attraction marketing for people that want to do that, but you've got a really interesting way of putting the message across. So could you summarize for the people that haven't seen you on the socials your messaging? It's strong.
Mm.
You're doing what I would suggest is tough love. I'm an old school guy.
Yes.
What's your intent there when you're putting out information on socials, which is going to help people?
Well, I think, a lot of people do read me wrong, right? Because yes, what I say is
Not
I
after
don't have
this
time for
show.
bullshit.
I'm
I
seeing
know
that.
everyone's gonna be like, oh, you've got such a soft side. I have, and I massively wear my heart on my sleeve.
Yeah.
And those in my inner circle absolutely show it. And the reason why I am tough, the reason why I'm tough is because I fucking care deeply, right? And I care so deeply that I'm prepared to tell somebody what they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear. There is a massive difference between being nice and being kind. Being nice is there, darling, you're gonna be okay. You're fat, you're overweight, it's gonna be all right. It's not going to be all fucking right. Being kind is, yes, I hear you. You are unhappy. You're fat. You are overweight. You are miserable. Your sex drive is that of a castrated field mouse. We need to do something about this. Hold my hand and I'm going to show you the way. That's being kind. Because when she turns around, she says, thank you so much. You saved my marriage. You've saved my life. You've saved my relationship with my children. And I'm now the fittest, strongest, and leanest I've ever been. And by the way, I'm making more money than ever. I want to be kind and not nice. And so that is why I tell it how it is. I do not have time for nicey nicey, right? I'm going to, I will be the first to give you the biggest hug, but I'm also going to tell you what I see and hold up a mirror for you because I don't want to see my ladies who have struggled for decades by the time they come to see me. I'm usually the last case, last resort, right? Because I've usually insulted them, quote unquote, that they've usually been triggered by me
Yeah.
prior to actually coming in to work with us. I will be your biggest fan and I will hold your hand all the way and I will walk through the fucking fire with you. But trust me, it's not going to be easy. And if you think that me coming across as very direct on social media is threatening, well, you're not going to go very far in life. And so, yeah, that's a little summary of why I do what I do.
Very well done. Gosh, we've got such similarities in different fields.
Yeah.
I'm exactly the same. I never forget a, a woman who was attacked here in Perth. She was pushing a pram with two twins in,
Oh God.
and a 17-year-old female who wanted to go back to jail ran at her from behind, yanked her down. The twins are in the air, and she's getting smashed over. Anyway, I used that actual picture, which was public, for some marketing and things, and her hubby contacted me and said, "Oh, could you please pull that down? It's quite triggering for us." At the exact same, and I didn't know it was a hubby. I couldn't prove that. At the same time, she emailed me saying, "Hey, I've seen you using my photo. Would you consider training me?" The reason I'm saying this is because hubby was triggered, and I obviously went back and made sure that I didn't offend anybody and asked her if it was hubby. She
Mm.
came to me, and at that stage, she was pregnant again. She came to me, realized she needed that, and came to me and got training. I said, "I'll train you for life for free. I don't care anywhere,
Yeah.
anytime." And she knew that she needed that, whereas other people were being, I'm going to read, they're being nice. but I was being kind, saying, I'll
Yes.
train you. Anybody else is going, oh, that's so bad that you've been through that. That brings us back to the first question I asked you, and you're answering it. What, how does a woman become so much successful in a male dominant industry? And you've shown it. You're doing action. You're actioning
Mm.
versus what females are doing, which is just sort of talking around it. So yeah,
Yeah.
what a difference.
I think as well, just having, people like to see on social media, they think they know you. I'm like, no, you know my social profile. You
Yes.
don't know me. And I'm a very private person. You'll notice like I don't post a lot of my husband. I mean, occasionally he makes an occasional guest appearance. But my children are certainly nowhere to be seen on social media. And I think in terms of how to make it in a male dominated industry, I'll just talk to that for a minute because we have a lot of female clients who work in male dominated industries, whether it's banking, law,
Great point.
finance, also in the military. They think that they have to be very masculine to compete, and in my early days I also thought that.
Yeah.
I would work 10 times harder than the boys. I was 10 times smarter. I went back to university twice because I wanted to prove myself. And I think when a woman really knows her worth, she can lead with a very strong but feminine way. And every time I work with male clients now, they appreciate the direct but very caring approach, because men also need to be taken care of. And I don't care what you guys say, like you need to be like held up sometimes, and you need somebody to have your back. And sometimes that's going to be your coach, and sometimes it's going to be your wife. And so all men really want is to be respected and have somebody believe in them. And so whether that's male or female, but particularly men, you have to believe in them before they believe in themselves sometimes. And, a man needs that. And so a really strong feminine woman in her power can give that without expecting any return. But if you respect your man and you support him in his goals and believe in him and tell him he's doing a great job, like he's going to be one happy pap.
Gosh, that's interesting the way you said that with female and in a male dominated place. I can just think back to New Zealand SAS and a couple of females there. We don't care what you are, what color you are, if you identify as gay, LGBT, or whatever.
Exactly.
Couldn't care less. All we care about is your competence. And I'll never
Yes.
forget, we had this tiny little female, little blonde, same sort of weight as you. And she was an amazing store person. And we looked after her like our sister because she was so competent. But if she was incompetent, we wouldn't care less. And same thing with Alia, very, very, she's a beautiful Olympian psychologist. And same thing, she didn't have to stomp around and beat her chest because they're incredibly
No.
competent in what they do, and they filled those gaps really, really well. And I guess that's the common thing now, is talking about the feminine and the masculine, just filling those roles and supporting and lifting each other up.
Absolutely. The two, there's no, and listen, I'm a strong woman and I've still got that tomboy in me, but
Hmm.
there are roles that you play in different scenarios and different situations. But I definitely think, a lot of the time masculine is seen as so strong and feminine is seen as like weak and vulnerable.
No,
And
not
actually
at all.
nothing could be further from the truth.
No.
And I think, that there's I mean, my husband, he's like the most masculine man. But he's so calm,
Yep.
certain. I think, when we talk about
It is
masculinity now,
masculinity.
everyone, absolutely, there's this stupid term, toxic masculinity. Well, I mean, that's not masculinity, is it? Like toxic masculinity of like, your dick waving and all of that. That's not real masculinity.
No.
Masculinity is about strength, protection, protection of self, protection of others,
Yep.
that and strong, calm, confident, collected. Whereas, I saw this tattoo actually on the internet
Yes.
about a year ago, and I don't have any tattoos. And one of the things that I said to David was, if I was going to get a tattoo, it would be this because it reminds me of our relationship, and that is, it said, "You keep me safe, and I keep you wild," and that is us. He's so. If I'm gonna say anything about David, it's like he makes me feel so safe emotionally, mentally. calm. He's my home. If I didn't, I know he would take care of everything if I needed him to. Whereas I also keep him wild. And I think that's the feminine side of, I'm a bit of a wild entrepreneur. I have
Yep.
big visions and I
Yep.
have big goals and I like to go off and do big things.
Because you're
I
safe. You
could
can do that. You can create,
be
right?
exactly that. I would not be able to do what I do
Yeah.
if he didn't have my back and go and do it,
Yep.
you know? And he's never questions. Like, I mean, I come up with some outrageous things and I do some outrageous things in business and I'm like, oh, let's buy this business. Let's do this. Let's do that. And all he says to me is, you go do it, do what you need to do. And so I wouldn't be able to do that unless I had like a strong base like him. And so I think this that whole like you keep me safe and I'll keep you wild. It's a really nice analogy between this masculine and the feminine pole.
It is a great explainer of it. I'm intrigued. Do men come to you for coaching as well?
They do, not so much now because our marketing is so heavily geared towards
Yeah.
women. Although we do have men come in, and to be honest, it would really depend on what it's for. A lot of the majority of the men that come to us would be for if they've got really stuck in something, whether it's really stuck in a relationship or it's really stuck financially, or they're really dealing with something like struggling with alcohol, emotional eating,
Yeah.
something like that. If it's just a case of somebody's looking for weight loss and fat loss, then I'll generally send them to Ali Gilbert. Um,
I was
you
just
know,
about to mention Ellie.
yes, Ali's amazing. So she's got such an amazing setup, amazing team. I absolutely like. We get on like a house on fire. So she does with men what I do with women.
Mm-hmm.
So I would generally, most men I would refer to Ali. Um, but because I work obviously with David as well. So David's generally takes the majority of the men that come with us.
The reason I asked that question is because of Ellie. You both seem like people that you both seem like women that men would listen to when you give that
Mm.
advice because you're so competent and so clear. You're not speaking in a masculine way, but you're speaking in our male logic way.
Yes.
And you just reminded me so much of her. So that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, I think we women like uh conversation,
Yes. Oh,
like
yeah.
just
You
kind of
want to
like
talk around it.
they can, yeah, bit back and forth, and they like a little bit of a story.
Yeah.
Whereas men like okay, here's how it is. This is what you're gonna do. This is why you're gonna go and do it. Go and do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, I actually had to learn the softer skills because my natural way of communicating is quote unquote cold. And I'm like, I'm not cold, I'm efficient.
Yeah.
So, in terms of being a little bit kinder,
Yep.
um, particularly working with women, I had to learn these softer skills of I'm not going to sugarcoat something, but I can tell a story now. I can introduce a little bit more context as to why this is important. Whereas
How
men
did
don't really give a shit.
how did you? No, we don't. Like get to the point. How did you learn that? I'm intrigued.
Honestly, like trial and error. I think one of my former mentors and a friend of yours, Mark. He used to call me Reptile Rach.
Yeah.
And he's like, you've got such a primitive brain, like you're so aggressive and so direct. And so Mark called me out on it a few times. Uh, and I was honestly, I was pretty pissed because I was like, well, like, I'm just so sick of the bullshit. Like, why don't people just tell it how it is?
Yeah.
So honestly, I think I just learned soft skills through time and age and growing the fuck up.
Oh, that's
Honestly.
interesting. I had someone years ago tell me about Donald Trump. We are talking about Donald Trump and his first presidency, and this person's mantra is you can say anything as long as the delivery is right. And I said, well,
Yeah.
Donald Trump's message is absolutely perfect, but his delivery is absolutely terrible for 50% of the population. 50% love him, 50% hate him. So therefore his delivery is not correct. So yeah, if your delivery is not right and you've got great skills at a message, then great, kudos to you for changing your delivery. Well done.
I think it's one of those things you can read the room.
Yeah.
And when you can read the room and read the energy in the room, and I mean, listen, I'm pretty woo-woo now, I'm fully out my spiritual closet. But when you can really read the energy of somebody and really read the room, and read a person, you can deliver the message in the way that it needs to be delivered and trust yourself that it will land how it's needed, how it needs to land. So I say some very direct things, but the tone in which it's delivered. And to be honest, I don't usually give a lot of context before I deliver. So if I'm going to deliver something that's pretty cutting, I will say permission to tell it how it is. And that's all I'll say is
Yeah.
permission to tell it how it is. Or I'll do it through questioning. So I'll say something like, oh, I'm just curious to know X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Why do you behave like that? I'm just curious to know what was kind of going through your head prior to stuffing your face in a cookie jar, rather than me saying, I know why you stuck your face in a cookie jar. It's because you were pissed that your husband came home and blah, 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 blah. Rather than me saying that, I would say, I'm curious to know. So that's always a really good intro because it's probing. People will give you enough information, but it's not attacking.
Yeah. I mean, you're having them answer the question for themselves, figure it
Mm.
out. Very clever.
And they'll say things like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, well, if you did know, what would you say? Because then that removes judgment from their answer. And a lot of people, particularly when it comes to sort of, shaming activities, whether it's smoking, drinking, alcohol, sex, gambling, whatever it might be, there's a lot of shame associated with that. So if we can remove the shame of, well, if you did know, what would you say? Because then we're removing that oh God, well, if I say this, I'm committing to it, and that means that I'm a bad person.
Yeah. Gosh, that's interesting to look at that. You've gone from physiotherapy and strength and conditioning to this. Where did you learn?
Yeah.
Was it David that taught you that and
Yeah.
you gelling with each other?
Yeah. When I met David in 2015, I had got to the stage with my business in Australia that I'd realized that there was a missing element, and that was the mindset side of things. So I had already started NLP
Right.
and starting to really look about more the psychological side of things. So bridging the gap between physiology and psychology. And, I talked about back in the day, bridging the gap between physio and strength conditioning. How can I
Yes.
bridge the gap now between the fitness industry and psychology? Because we'd have this camp that was like all about intuitive eating. And it's just like, well, eat whatever you want.
Well,
Listen, you say that to an overweight person, they're going to get whispers like croissant, cake, hot chocolate, like whatever it might be. That's your intuition telling you to eat these foods. That's
yeah.
not intuitive eating. And this is also why we end up then with like this whole health at every size situation. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but if you are overweight, that is not healthy.
Mm.
Metabolically, we're going to have some problems later on down the line. And so I don't believe in this whole health at any size situation. So I really thought, right, there's got to be a way for people to be fit, lean, and healthy and be psychologically healthy, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically healthy, and energetically healthy. We have five bodies. We don't just have the physical, which is what people think. And so what I set out to do was basically bridge that gap. And then when I met David, not only did I meet my husband, but I also then met my business partner who had obviously spent many years in this area already. So a lot of what I know today has been just absorbed through David, watching him, listening to him, like hours of our own podcasting together. And then also have him analyze my behaviors. He analyzes my behaviors and the way that I operate and the way that I do things. And then I hear him talking about that with clients. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that I did that. So I think you learn, but I learned by osmosis. He's written a book on emotional eating called Think Straight, Lose Weight. And when I was going through that book and obviously reading a lot of that, I'd obviously ask a lot of questions. So yeah, he's also, like, my husband's been a mentor to me, very much so in this area of, I guess, my career.
I was really intrigued at where you learned that. It's great to hear the synergy between you. Um, Going back to when you talked about reading the room and the right delivery, it's really the mark of a great coach. And I think back to
Mm.
one of our regimental dinners at the New Zealand SAS. We had a former Olympic gold medalist, Murray Halberg, which the Halberg Awards are named after. We get great guest speakers each year. Before I joined, Edmund Hillary was or the late Edmund Hillary was one of the guest speakers. And Hellberg was talking about Arthur Lydiard, who was, for the listeners and viewers, the first, one of the most successful coaches in the world for Olympic athletes, and the reason that people jog now. He invented jogging in the world, which is long, slow distance. But Murray Hellberg was speaking about Arthur Lydiard, and before the Olympic finals, he took Murray out for a beer because that's what Murray needed at that moment to get his head straight to go and run. Whereas another athlete needed maybe a kick in the ass or needed this and that. It's the mark of a great coach. We're going back to the start where you talked about measurements on strength and conditioning. You know, we now can measure athletes' recovery, sleep, force plate stuff. Didn't have that back then. We're talking about 1960s. The coach had to read each athlete to get the most out of it. And that's what you're clearly proposing that you do with your clientele.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important one is knowing what somebody needs. And, I'll just touch on this whole science-based thing a minute, because I think, there's a big push now to have everything evidence-based and science-based, which is great. But one of my mentors used to say to me, if we're waiting to act until the science comes out, we're going to be waiting a very long time. And so, particularly when we're working with humans, we're very complex characters and beings and organisms. We're not robots. And this is why I say we have the 5 bodies: mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic, and physical. And I think a lot of people are forgetting that. So when it comes to the delivery of, how we practice, we should be science informed, right? I wouldn't say that what we do is evidence-based. It is not. It is evidence-informed. It is not evidence-based. We do, however, rely heavily on experience, intuition, and the art of coaching. And I think experience, intuition, and the art of coaching are seriously missing in our industry. But you can't teach that to a 21-year-old strength coach. There is no way that I would be able to deliver then what I'm able to deliver now.
Yeah.
And, if I had a room of, 20, 26-year-old rugby players, now my delivery would be so different. And my approach would be very different. I'd still be yelling in their fucking ear, but the overall delivery of it would be different. And you talk to your athletes, like I talk to my clients, like, how are you today? How are you feeling? Where are you at? What's happening in your life?
Yeah.
And we didn't do that back then. What's happening in your life? Not you didn't know that they just broke up with their girlfriend at the weekend, and then like they're really upset. Like these poor kids, like these boys, 26-year-old boys, like they're really upset. What they need right now is like a hug, right, from Auntie Rachel, right? they don't need to be fucking yelled at when they're like mentally, emotionally, and spiritually spent.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes a little bit of love goes a long way. So yes, we need to be science informed, evidence informed. I wouldn't say what we do is evidence based. It is with the art of coaching, the intuition and experience, and that really does count for a lot. But again, you can only do that when you get to a certain point in your career, which is nearly 20 years in.
That's great that you said that, and it reminds me of a good friend of mine, Dr. Kirk Parsley. You probably know him. I know Ellie
yes.
does. Great guy, and he talks about the science and art of medicine. He's a medical doctor, and it's both. And if you're just the science doctor, it's going to be exactly what you said. You're behind the 8 ball. If it's just the art, you're like some soothsayer back in the day. But yes. It's the science and art, and knowing the right thing to do at the right time. We painted a beautiful picture of all the things that Rachel does. I'd love to maybe just get a little snapshot. A client comes into you, a female client, they've approached you. What does it sort of look like when you take them on? I'd love to just get an idea of it, because I've gone around the edges there, but I just want to sort of finite that up a little bit and really explain for everybody what you do with a client.
Yeah, so there are two main paths to work with us. So we have Onyx Performance. So Onyx Performance is our more of our health, fitness, and education platform. So I don't like to call it an app, although we do have an app, but it's so much more than that. So yes, this is where I'm going to teach you how to eat. I'm going to teach you about what we call baseline nutrition, your non-negotiables. You got your training in there. you're lifting. I'm going to teach you how to lift weights properly. And we've got periodized programs over the course of a year and beyond with that. And then we do also have a very, very strong mindset and identity component to Onyx, because even though we can't accelerate that like we would do with the private clients, it's very important to us that we give somebody the knowledge and the education in order to be able to actually get actionable tools in what to do. Because let's be honest here, we hear the word mindset and it's a bit like, it's like opening this Pandora's box.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't want to open Pandora's box because it's like, oh my God, this is such a clusterfuck. Where do I even begin? I'm so fucked up.
Don't
You're
want to
not.
pull that band-aid off of what's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of thing.
Exactly. So all I would always say to people is, just adopt the mindset of show me how good it can get. And the better it gets, the better it gets. So what you've done up in life until now, there's another level for you and there's another level for all of us. And it's just like peeling off the onion layers, right? Of next level identity, next level of personal growth, next level of emotional freedom and level of happiness. And it's so important to me to spread the message of mental and emotional freedom, because I think when you're emotionally free around food, you're emotionally free in yourself, you can become very, very resilient in life, because life is not all sunshine and rainbows. As we all know, shit is going to happen, shit is going to hit the fan. And to be able to have that emotional freedom in yourself and that real sense of, I can do hard things, the universe has my back, and I will always be able to handle myself. That's such a huge belief to have. And it's something that's very important for me to install into women. So that's Onyx Performance. And then we have private client consulting, which is where obviously if somebody wants to kind of fast track that experience. And then I also do take on some clients who are more like the business and health side of things as well. So some examples would be, I've got, a doctor, for example, she's got her own clinic, looking to kind of like, how do I manage to balance like the health side with growing the practice side of things? Because, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. It's also a massive love of mine is business. And so to be able to do that is awesome. So I think generally the first port of call that we would always do with clients is you give them what they want and you show them what they need. And I'm actually a massive believer in fast fat loss. I don't like this idea, which I used to do, of slow and steady wins the race. I believe that when somebody has struggled for decades, we need to get fat off them as quickly as humanly possible. It is not unreasonable for our clients to lose 4 to 5, 6 kilos in the first month of working with us. And the reason I do that is because I need to give somebody the belief. And remember what I said before is that I have to believe in somebody more than they believe in themselves. I can't want it more for them than they want it for themselves. And as a coach, that's really hard because I want it for somebody so badly. But they have to want it, but I'll believe in them until they believe in themselves. And so we have to get that weight off quickly, because then they start to believe, holy shit, I can actually do this. And then obviously in the background, so of course we have their training and nutrition. That's the first things that we do. But whilst we've got that in place, then of course we're working on the mindset. We're working on rewiring the brain, and that's an emotional language that we have to talk. Because when we're looking at rewiring the brain, you've obviously got the logical brain, which speaks English or speaks the word of language, whereas the emotional brain only speaks the language of emotion. So we have to intervene in those moments. So it's in the moment when somebody is triggered. It's in the moment when somebody goes to binge. It's in those moments that we have to intervene there and then. So that's how we kind of rewire the brain in the back end, whilst we're obviously getting people physical results on the front end. And of course, then they start feeling better, and then it's like this cycle of like refilling that belief in somebody so that they then fly. And also, it's not always, weight loss is not always linear. There are going to be moments of plateaus. And I think it's about coaching somebody through that and knowing that that's normal, completely normal part of the process. And I just frame it of, okay, there's obviously another onion layer that we need to get off here. Let's find it. Let's deal with it. And then we can move on.
It's really, I agree with you on the fast fat loss side of things. And I've never had that issue myself, having to drop fat fast, but I have had the world's history of injuries. And because you're
Mm,
living with fat every minute of the day, and because you're living with an injury and pain every minute of the day, and I get to see Rachel for an hour each week or whatever it is, or the physio or whatever, um, I'm having to deal with that. So I would suggest to the listeners and viewers, concurring with you, that boom, I lose 5 kilos in a month. I can see my belt has gone in an inch and a few
yeah.
notches. That's a finite thing. What she says works. I'll keep on doing that. What I'm doing is working. So you're living with it every day and it's getting better, rather than, like you said, maybe 2 kilos in 6 weeks, um, which is science based. But
Mhm.
psychologically, it may not get the winner. It may go, oh, she's only done 2 kilos. I could do that in the toilet.
Mm. That's true. Men do that. Unfortunately, women, we don't quite have those losses. But you know what? For some people, especially people who are more overweight, big losses are not a bad thing.
Mm,
If you try to get 2 kilos off me in a month, well,
good luck.
I'd be looking pretty gaunt by the time we got there. So, and a lot of our clients, they only have like those last 5 kilos to lose, which is sometimes the hardest
Yep.
because they keep going round and round in those circles. Whereas we also have clients who are very, very overweight and have really struggled for many, many years. And we're getting obviously a new lot of clients coming through now, which are the GLP clients who, for whatever reason, they've been on GLP injections. They have lost a substantial amount of weight. So this is, your Manjaros, your Ozempic, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
But what I'm finding is that a lot of these doses are very, very high and they do not need to be high. So if you are looking at or going down a route of GLPs, I mean, look, we do it without, but if you don't have access to the type of psychological support and stuff and the type of trainings that we provide, and it's something that you are considering, just be very mindful. Again, minimal effective dose, because I've got a client at the moment, she's a medical doctor herself, and she's now on a microdose. So we've brought her dose that she lost, I don't know, 40 kilos. We
Wow.
brought her dose right down now, so she's just microdosing right now. And she said she basically came to a skinny fat, and so she really needs to increase her muscle mass.
Yeah.
But in order to be able to do that, I need my clients to have an appetite. And so it's all very well and good saying, well, I've got no appetite. Well, then you're going to be like a saggy, deflated balloon, and that's not attractive either. And it's definitely not healthy and definitely not functional. So whilst you may not have much body fat on you, you're also looking like a sack of shit. And a lot of women will say, I don't like the way I look. Well, great. Well, then we need to build muscle. In order to build muscle, I've got to make sure that you're having 30 to 50 grams of protein 3 times a day. Well, I can't stomach it. Well, then there's a problem, right? So we've got to bring down a dose. So then we can microdose whilst I've spent 4 months with her now, obviously training her mindset, rewiring, repatterning, a lot of that. And so now we will be able to bring her off it.
Brilliant.
And so GLPs absolutely have their place. And I think for a lot of people, they are a lifeline. Do I think they're overused? Absolutely. Are there situations in which there are women who are my side taking GLPs? Yes, there are. And look, there is research coming out now to show that, it's not just about weight loss, that they have other health markers. Yes, but I think it's early days. I do think they are overused. I think a lot of people would benefit from a lot more psychological support before they try something like that. But look, if you're going to go down that route and you're going to be healthier, great. Just please, minimal effective dose. Please make sure that you're doing strength training. Make sure that you're having 30 to 50 grams of protein 3 times a day. You've got enough calories to support also brain health, so that you're sharp. You maintain your level of high performance, because you want a high performance body, high performance brain, high performance work. This trio go hand in hand. Can't have one without the other. So, that's my little take on GLPs. I think they're a game changer for most, but I do also think they're overused.
Just to translate that for the viewers and listeners, and you nailed it, eat protein, lift weights,
Mm.
these things like Ozempic is not for you, Rachel, obviously for the listeners and viewers, but Ozempic and Manjaro GLP meds, they will drop your appetite down so much that you will lose muscle if you don't do what
Yes.
Rachel said. And every doctor will say that. And the classic one is Google Ozempic butt, Ozempic bum.
Yeah.
There's no more bum. Well, yeah, again, strength coaches, the ladies are phenomenal at growing glutes, but not on Ozempic.
It's really tough. Like it is, unless we have like you're on a minimal effective dose,
Yeah.
of, yes, go through your weight loss journey, but we really have to rewire the brain, because what's going to happen otherwise, you're just going to end up on the same dose all along. Or if you're on a micro dose, well, we still need to really be rewiring the brain. And for us to build muscle, please, like we've got to have some nutrients in there. So yes, it's all very well and good being skinny, but at what cost? We've got to
Exactly.
have some muscle in there too.
You touched on that, which I didn't know we were going to go down. I was considering asking about supplements. I've
Mhm.
I've been in this game for 39 years lifting weights. Lifting weights as a 13 years old, and I've managed to bring my supplements down to a few bare minimums. I'm looking at the
Mhm.
creatine in the state over there in my kitchen, and creatine's an interesting one with the research out now. But supplement wise, is there any big rocks I like to call them, or Tony Robbins perhaps likes to call them, that you use with the clients, or is it supplement free? What are some big factors there that you might use?
Well, first of all, I've tried state as well, and it's amazing. So
Oh wow,
if anybody's listening, I know I very kindly like had an order sent over to us. So David and I have both used state for a good couple of months, and it's a great product. So definitely recommend those.
do you know
But in
what,
terms of,
Rachel? I find the
oh
women,
well,
and I give it to friends. The women feel it so much more because you guys are in
yeah.
touch. The guys are like, oh yeah, it's good, and they see their bloods, but the women, they're just so much more level.
Yes, it's one of those things that I actually did it before the summer, and I then ran out, so I should probably order some more. But it's one of those
We'll
things
hook
that,
you up.
just before the summer, David and I, we were really consistent with it. Like David's into his teas. He's better on his teas than I am. I'm more of a double espresso girl. Um, can you tell? Uh, and yeah, I just, over the summer, I said to David, I'm feeling really good, feeling really good, feeling strong. But I think we are more in tune.
Yes.
And I think supplements very much are the tip of the iceberg. I've just started experimenting actually with peptides, but similar thing. People have said, well, what's your experience with peptides? I'm like, it's the 1% of the 1%. So,
Yes.
on our level, on our little hierarchy, we've got, obviously training, nutrition, food, sleep,
Yeah.
uh,
Beautiful.
except mindset. And then we've got supplements, and then we've got things like additional things like peptides, which I'm literally just experimenting with. I'm a complete beginner, and I've just probably into my second month now. But when it comes to supplements, I do have some core supplements that I do recommend for women. Obviously, one of them being creatine.
Yeah.
Um, I do recommend the Creapure, which is what is in state. So that's the European standard
Yep.
of creatine. And I do recommend 10 grams a day. So I usually
I
split
agree.
that dose. And the reason that I split that dose is because for some women, I don't know why, like they're a bit funny about taking 10 grams at a time. I have tried a lot of supplements and different creatines over the years. I can tell you now, it has absolutely no effect on water retention. Does it have an effect on strength? Yes,
Hmm.
but it has no effect on my physique, my body composition, etc., etc. I just, for some people that say, oh, well, I gain a lot of water, and I'm not. I really find that like kind of tough to believe. So yeah, 10 grams a day split into two. So creatine, and then the obvious ones, vitamin D with K2,
Beautiful.
magnesium, zinc. Those would probably be in my top, and then we've kind of got the ones slightly underneath that, like well, B vitamins would be in there somewhere. Fish oils, yes, they're very important as well. You could talk about probiotics and cycling them, but again, they kind of come into that sort of that second layer.
Mm.
Whereas if I'm going to look at somebody's blood work, I mean, even before doing somebody's blood work, they'd always be on creatine, vitamin D, K2, magnesium, zinc, and maybe like a broad spectrum B vitamin. And then I'd look in their blood work. We could look to see if they've got the MTHFR gene. Do they need more like detoxification support? What are they really struggling with? How are they dealing with stress? Do we need to bring in some, adaptogens? But honestly, I really feel that is kind of so far down the line that I
Yeah.
don't really deal with that unless I'm dealing with a private client who's been with us for quite a few months before I introduce that stuff. What are
Yeah.
your take on supplements? What's your favorite
Well,
stack?
first off, it's a supplement. As Kirk
Yeah.
says, it's a supplement. And you've paraphrasing you, there's the other big rocks of nutrition and so on and so on. Creatine for my body weight at 80 kilos, I'm on about 30 grams. I'll take some
Hmm.
at night to try and push a bit more sleep. And I love it if I've had a bad sleep at the fire station, perhaps, because it brings your brain back online with a decent amount. So creatine, good quality protein powder, because I like to keep my calories down sometimes.
Of course.
The state
Yeah.
is the state's good for me because I hate taking multivitamins. There's too many to take, and I know at least it gets me some good zinc, which you mentioned. So my testosterone isn't going to be defeated. But my take on that and vitamin D is, I wish those things were in our food now, but they're just not. Bad luck. We
Mm.
do have to take fish oil. We do have to take vitamin D. You probably got to take some zinc, and then creatine is some extra fancy thing, and protein powder is just because I'm a little bit not vain, but not vain, and I like to have some muscles. So I have a high
Well,
protein
hey,
amount.
listen, we all want to be hot, jacked, and shredded. I mean, let's be honest here. We all, and it doesn't matter what age we are, we all want to be hot, jacked, and shredded. So, and a protein powder, I would agree. And it's depending on where you are in the world. I just try to get grass fed, your grass-fed whey isolate, whey concentrate, whatever you can get your hands on.
Yeah,
Try and get it grass-fed. I mean, try and get it sweetened with stevia with a bit of cocoa powder.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people do like these fancy wheys now that have, and they mix it with the almond milk and all these fancy other things. I'm like, just put some water and ice with it and just get it down you.
yeah. It's pretty simple stuff. I mentioned 39 years of lifting. I remember going into the health store, and I literally thought these things were going to be steroids. This pack of vitamins for a
Me
week would
too.
make me like Schwarzenegger because I was a 16-year-old kid walking in.
Yes.
Look, there's no magic pill, and you and I both agreed on the supplements, and really they're just supplemental to a deficient diet. That's my general take on it.
My exactly the same as mine. And I think we can, even if we had like a whole food, grass fed, organic, perfect diet nowadays, even if you, I mean, it's very hard here in the Middle East where all of the majority of our food is imported.
Mm,
You may get like a slightly fresher food in Australia and New Zealand, but even then, the soils are not what they used to be. So I do
exactly.
think we do need to think about some form of supplementation.
Yeah, keeping it simple. Look, it's been a
Yes.
beautiful chat, Rachel. I've loved getting to know you and getting to. Again, I have to say thank you. I've said before. I think I've had about 6 guys cry on my show, and many of them were Special Forces guys. One was Paul Baxendale, who was Dorian Yates' training partner. But I think you're the first
Amazing.
female to shed a tear on the show. So thank you for being so
Yeah.
authentic on the show.
Well, there are many stories that will make me cry, and that's just one of them. I've got quite a few stories in the ICU, and you know, I think some clients as well. You just look at some clients sometimes, and you think, wow, like you did that, and if I've been a small part of your journey, then it makes it even sweeter. So yeah.
It's beautiful to help people. Look, we've got narrated show notes at the start. You've probably seen that on some of the shows, but people listening now, where's the best place to go and connect with you?
I would say I'm most active on Instagram, so you can come and find me at the Rachel Godfrey on Instagram. I also have our main website, which is chaselifeconsulting.com, or we've got our education hub, which is the houseofonyx.com.
Beautiful. I'll put those in the show notes as well. Thank you. It's been amazing chatting to you. Thank you for taking the time, and great to connect with someone who's been down in my hometown in Dunedin and catch up with some of my friends as well. So it's been an honor to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, a pleasure. All right, I'll hit pause. We'll have a quick chat. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator and former Australian police officer, and your podcast host. Please check out my new project at hownottoDieGuy.com, where I teach everything you need to know to both males and females, at-risk populations, schools, kids, and the elderly for self-defense, situation awareness, and all-round skills that every good person should know. Thanks for watching.